Hey, friendo, Steve here. Yeah, last night I went to go see that Captain Marvel movie. It's the latest in a long line of these movies from what's called the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, this July or May or something, Avengers Endgame is coming out. So that should be a lot of fun. I think it's in May. So that should be a lot of fun. Anyways, this is obviously sort of the lead in to that. Captain Marvel. This isn't really a spoiler alert. It's probably going to be a big role in that Avengers Endgame, the next Infinity War movie. Anyways, figure I'd do a review of Captain Marvel because I saw it last night. I went with the movie squad, and we went to go check it out. And yeah, so before I get started, there will be some minor spoilers in this. I'm not going to do like a bit-by-bit plot breakdown, but along the line, talking about things, I will probably be spoiling some things. Probably nothing major, but some little bits here and there. I mean, there's a pretty decent sized twist towards the back half of the movie, which I might talk about, I might not talk about. I probably won't talk about it. So anyways, and then I got a couple questions here from the community tab from people, and I'm going to answer those at the very end of the thing. So yeah, be sure to hit that subscribe button, notify bell, so they get notified whenever the community tab stuff goes live. I'm trying to do more stuff on the channel. Anyways, enough of that. I wrote down some notes here, so I'll also be looking slightly off camera during this review. I'll kick it off with just, in a nutshell, I enjoyed it. I give it a yay. That's my short review. Yay. It's good. It's a really good lead into Endgame. Obviously, look, the thing is, if you're watching these Marvel movies, it is a serialized film series. So if you're watching Captain Marvel just sort of in its own vacuum, it might be a bit on the confusing side, some of the little nuts and bolts of it. So these things, they just simply don't exist on their own anymore, and that's okay, because it's sort of the joy of the Marvel movies. They're meant for people who are going to go see pretty much all of these. There's a couple franchises in the series that kind of doesn't apply to. Ant-Man, for example, can kind of just stand alone on its own and be fine. There are obviously references to what's going on in the general Marvel universe, but the Spider-Man movies are probably the same way. Captain Marvel, kind of you pretty much figure this is a direct lead into Endgame, and then of course there's some very much origin story of the Avengers universe, or the Avengers themselves, going on here, which is actually really cool. But overall, it's just a really fun, light movie. I think the writer of the movie even called it an action comedy. And so there are obviously, as with a lot of Marvel movies, a lot of comedic elements to it. It's not a perfect movie, though. Some of the direction was a bit clunky. It's kind of low on actual tension. By the end of the movie, she is so supremely overpowered that the climax of the movie is just kind of like fun to watch her beat up on bad guys. It's kind of like a superhero death wish, basically. So yeah, I'll say this about it though. Even though it's not a perfect movie, it never bored me. Actually, I'm not a huge fan of Marvel's origin movies. Have traditionally followed kind of the same template. Normal person is in a low point in their life. They get powers. And then they prioritize their life, and then they come up against conflict. It's a story told a million times, going back decades and decades, in movie making, in fiction, in stories, in books, and all that kind of stuff. And Marvel sort of plays out the normal character hero arc, by and large, following a similar template every time. In this case, they actually followed a different sort of plot layout, and I kind of appreciated that about it. It also it really made me miss the 1990s. I was a teenager in the 1990s, and this is set in 1995, and hoo boy, it really does make me miss the 1990s. It was pretty cool back then. So yeah, it's not a perfect movie. As far as Marvel movies go, it kind of just ranks right in the middle of the pack. It's not as good as maybe, say, as slick as like Black Panther, or the first Iron Man movie, but it's significantly better than Iron Man 2. And I'll be honest, Ant-Man, I was not a huge fan of Ant-Man, even though I liked all the bits and pieces of, like, the cast of Ant-Man was really good. I'm not a fan of, you can read those origin stories Like, you just know what's going to happen. Like, you know what's going to happen. And I like this movie didn't really follow that formula. All right, I'm going to get into the things now, things that I liked, and then I'll talk about the things that I didn't like specifically. So, like I kind of alluded to, this is not your normal origin story plot. We learn about her life as she learns about her life herself, which I thought was kind of an interesting and different take with this, with the Carol Danvers character. The soundtrack, like I said, was kind of a love letter to the 90s. Elastica, Nirvana, garbage, no doubt. There are a lot of funny bits about what life in the 90s was like. Of course, it starts off basically at a Blockbuster video. You have like slow loading computers. You have the old dial-up internet sounds and all that kind of stuff. You got pagers in it instead of cell phones. So it really was sort of a love letter to the 90s. I like that though. But going back to the origin story aspect of things, like I said earlier, typically you start off with this movie easily could have started off with Carol Danvers, the Brie Larson character, with her as fighter jet pilot person, doing her routines and being a hotshot Top Gun type. And then it could have taken you through it in a more linear fashion. And I'm really glad it didn't, because number one, obviously that wouldn't work for the big sort of heel face double turn thing that happens during the middle of the movie. But also it's just a refreshing way to get an origin story. You find out things the way she finds out things. And I think that worked really, really well. Let's see here. Like I said already, also given its placement as the origin of the Avengers Initiative, it worked well as a lead into Endgame, which made it feel more like a Marvel must-watch movie if you're wrapped up in the whole Infinity War story. I thought the casting of Brie Larson was actually really was great. I thought she was perfect for the role. I thought she brought a lot. She brought a confidence and a sense of humor to it. I think there might have been a little too much of the forced humor, but I thought by and large it was fairly natural, and I thought she was really good. Jude Law as her mentor was really well cast. And there was a lot of Samuel Jackson as a younger Nick Fury, which I thought I thought was a good decision to have him so prominently featured. It kind of works as an origin story of sorts for him, as well as it pertains to the entire Avengers thing. So I thought that was really cool. It was nice to see Agent Coulson back as well. There's a spoiler for you. The action itself in the movie is actually well paced and well directed, especially in the last chunk of the movie. This isn't always easy. There are a lot of movies out there. It was one of my main problems with Solo, with the Star Wars movie Solo, is that a lot of the action in that actually felt very lazy. Let's see. So yeah, the directors of this movie, Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. I don't think, I could be wrong about this, but I'm looking at their IMDb page. I haven't seen any of the movies they've done prior to this, but none of them look like they're action movies. I could be completely wrong about that. I will go into, another thing I thought was really great, the casting of Ben Mendelsohn in the lead bad guy role. Trying to avoid some spoilers here. I thought was fairly inspired. I thought he was obviously a bright spot in the movie. Some of his guest stuff got the best reaction out of the crowd in the movie theater I was watching. Some things that I didn't like about the movie, because like I said, it's not a perfect movie. The movie wasn't nearly as visually interesting as we've become used to with the Marvel movies. If you think about, for example, the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which also is, I know a lot of this movie was set on Earth, and Guardians of the Galaxy was almost exclusively, I know the first one anyways, not so much the second one, had some scenes on Earth, but not a whole lot. Like 90% of both those movies were set in outer space. And the color schemes and how they use the color were all like immaculate. I thought that what could easily be just sort of color vomit thrown at the screen was actually very, very well used in everything from Infinity War to the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. This was not as visually interesting or dynamic as we've come to become used to with the Marvel movies. Some of it actually felt kind of stale, visually speaking. Part of me wonders, I mean, giving it the benefit of the doubt, maybe that's supposed to be a throwback to like the 90s as well. Maybe that's an idea. Some specific things that I'm thinking of. When she meets up with the Supreme AI intelligence thing, I thought it just didn't look all that visually interesting or appealing. When during the opening scene on the planet, it felt. I'll be honest, it felt kind of cheap. You couldn't really see where the maybe it wasn't one of the more bigger budget Marvel movies. I don't know. It did feel a bit on the cheap side, and I think that when you're leading into something as big as Avengers Endgame, you might want to pony up some more cash, or maybe hire some. God, I hate to run anybody down, but just production wise, production design wise, it wasn't the strongest. I'd kind of interested to do some research in terms of who is behind production design on this. It might be directors coming from a smaller movie sort of background, that they had a hard time handling sort of what a big budget could do. I don't know. I can't really speculate. All I know is that visually it wasn't the most interesting movie in the world. There were some high bits here and there, but by and large, there were some bits that I felt that they kind of dropped the ball on. Specifically, there was that scene towards the end where she's back talking with the Supreme AI, and you got Nirvana's "Come As You Are" playing, which I thought could have been a very effective use of music meshed with some interesting visuals, and I feel like they kind of dropped the ball with that. So yeah, some of it just felt a bit on the cheap side, visually speaking. I also thought that one big misfire was the Annette Bening character. I kind of felt like, and I don't know if this was a product of the original source material. I did not read the original. I probably should. The comic book series Captain Marvel, written by Kelly Sue DeConnick. I didn't read that, so I'm not sure if maybe they were either trying to stay faithful to the source material. I don't know if that character was in the source material. I don't know, but I do feel like we as an audience would have felt a bit more for what that character meant to Brie Larson's Carol Danvers character, had we seen more, or had that character been written as more of a mentor to Carol Danvers' character. I just think that probably would have made us give a bit more of a damn about Annette Bening, who kind of came off as a bit, and I think for storyline reasons maybe a little bit, but came off as a bit cold, and you just didn't really get much of a feel for their relationship because there really wasn't much of a relationship there. I feel like if we got a couple scenes where maybe that character was written a bit differently and there was more of a relationship there, we would have cared a bit more about pretty much everything going on in the movie. And especially you have Annette Bening. She's like a world-class freaking, actress, been around forever, and she's really fantastic. Kind of feel like they dropped the ball on the Annette Bening character. And then some of the dialogue itself just felt a bit on the clunky side. We're used to Marvel movies that have, for the most part, pretty slick dialogue. I think there was definitely some bright spots. All in all, I thought it was okay, but there were moments when the dialogue felt clunky, and I feel like it sort of stood out like a sore thumb. With these Marvel movies, we're usually used to characters who come off as very naturalistic, and some of this stuff just felt kind of clunky. I mean, I understand that Brie Larson's character is for all intents and purposes, a space alien soldier person until we get to know otherwise, and so maybe that could be one explanation, but I kind of feel like some of the more naturalistic dialogue we're used to in the Marvel movies was kind of missing in places here and was replaced by some sort of clunky dialogue. But that's because I think honestly with these Marvel movies, we are held, especially with Infinity War, when there was just a plethora of awesome character moments. People that we haven't seen share the screen with each other before. I'll give you one example. This is not necessarily in the dialogue, but in the writing itself. Nick Fury's character, I feel like he was written a bit too goofy. I understand that this is earlier in his career. This is before he's seen all the things that he's seen, but he was a bit on the goofy side. And I know that was the point. I feel like if they dialed that down a little bit, it probably would have been a bit more powerful, and it probably wouldn't have felt a bit as awkward as it did. couple of the small things that I enjoyed. I really liked all the love for Stan Lee. He played a heavy part in that opening bit where the Marvel Studios logo shows up, and then of course they gave him. I'm pretty sure they did this like sort of in a post. I don't know that they actually filmed this cameo itself, but he had his cameo. I think it was CG, or they just reappropriated some footage. There was a cool little shout out to Mallrats there, which I thought was really awesome because at the time Mallrats, of course, was coming out, and that was really great. I also appreciate, I mentioned the writer of the original source material comic book, Kelly Sue DeConnick. She had a cameo, and I felt very smart for noticing that because she's got a very distinctive look. She has very, very bright red hair. Back in the day when I used to try to publish comic books myself, she was up and coming, and it's really awesome to see somebody get to the point where, hey, your vision's up there on the screen, and then you get a little cameo in the movie. It's really cool to see that. And I was able to nudge Lacey and say, hey, I know who that is. She's the writer, and they gave her a little cameo, so that's really neat. So that was really cool. And then, of course, there's also the matter of the movie's female empowerment themes. I thought that was really, really cool. The movie's a PG-13. There's violence in it, but it's mainly like alien violence, so it's kind of like goofy. I would be totally cool. As many of you know, I got a little 4-year-old Alabama. She's actually seen. She loves the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and this has probably around the same amount of violence as those. And so I don't know if you have a little kid, boy or girl. To be honest with you, this movie actually wouldn't be too inappropriate for them to watch and get a kick out of. There are some elements to it that actually come off as very kid friendly, and I probably wouldn't, a couple of years anyways, Alabama might actually really get a big kick out of this movie, and she might actually get a big kick out of it now, to be honest with you. So yeah, I thought that stuff was pretty strong. I think I guess I should probably address this. There's that sort of weird fake controversy over this movie, supposedly having some sort of hard left agenda. I think I'll be honest, I'll just lay it out right now how I feel about that. I think it's stupid. I think that certain media types out there, certain personalities in a certain arm of media these days, are trying to make an issue out of something where there isn't one. Basically, I don't know why. Basically, maybe just to hold on to some form of relevance when they find their relevance slipping away, perhaps. If your belief is that a movie that has like a healthy, positive female empowerment theme, just to help, which it basically goes a long way in helping advance the plot and the character in this movie. If you think that's some sort of nefarious agenda on the left, you probably should go find a hobby or something. I'll be honest with you. I mean, go into movie review sites like Rotten Tomatoes and downvoting a movie that you haven't seen based on, I don't know, the weird ideological issues that you have is kind of pathetic, to be honest with you. If you don't like the movie on its own merits, that's one thing. But this is definitely not a movie that deserves all the negative attention that it has coming to it. So I think that's kind of a bit silly, to be honest with you. But anyways, I have some questions here from some friendos. So I'll load them up and do my best to answer them. Oh man, we got 8 of them. Wow. Nonstop Player says, "What did it exceed your expectations? Why was the CG so awful?" I didn't think the CG was so awful. I thought visually it wasn't like the strongest Marvel movie. I didn't necessarily think the CG was all that bad. I mean, there was some stuff. It's funny these days, expectations are so high with computer graphics that yeah, I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad, but I don't know. I'm old. Maybe I don't know. Let's see here. Tony Joe says, "I don't have a question. Just want to say that The Cat was my favorite. I enjoyed the film, but it gave me strong Men in Black feels." I agree with that. I think it's actually that's a great analogy right there. I did love the cat Goose. I thought Goose was a pretty interesting and pretty shocking and funny reveal towards the end there. I thought that was pretty fun. Juan Angel Portillo Sigala says, "Do you think they were trying too hard on the 90s jokes?" No, I thought it was perfect. I'll be honest. I laughed at every single one of them because when you've lived it, you sort of, it just hits home. It really does. Michael Hobbs, do you think it was trying too hard to be epic? I don't. I think it was trying to be what it was. Although I guess now that I think about it, maybe the score was a little on the big side of things. But no, I thought it was. I think it's a big character. I think it's a big, powerful character. That Ricky Skirby here actually brings up a good point. How does a character so immensely powerful can you continue to exist in the MCU post Endgame without being too overpowered? That's a good point. I think one thing they might want to consider doing is, and I'm not sure how it plays out in the comic books, but if she's being used as strictly a last case scenario, it'll be interesting to see how Captain Marvel matches up with Thanos. I don't know. I'm interested to see how it plays out in Endgame. But if she becomes sort of, a one-woman police force for the rest of the galaxy, that might be it. You can't rely on her every single time to thwart these big things. I don't even know what their plans are post-Endgame, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure. Christian Womble, what does the post-credit scene mean for Endgame? I really loved it. So big spoiler alert for the post-credit scene. Post-credits, you get the next scene that we probably would have got after the end credit scene in Infinity War, when Samuel Jackson ends up getting dithered away by Thanos, and he drops his pager calling out for Captain Marvel. It successfully goes through. Now we're with the rest of the Avengers who haven't been killed off, and they're activating that pager. They don't know what it's all about, and Captain Marvel appears and says, "Where's Fury?" And then it cuts to black, and it says she'll appear in Avengers Endgame. So I think that's I think that's just going to be a scene in Endgame. I think that's what we got. I think it's not necessarily a post-credit scene specific to Captain Marvel. I think that's going to be, one of the first scenes we get in Endgame. So that's very exciting. Patrick Sparks, where does Captain Marvel rank on a list of origin films? Marvel's got some pretty strong origin films in the first place. Iron Man 1 is one of the best ones. The first Captain America is really, really good. I never actually saw the first Thor movie. I'm not sure if that's... I assume that's an origin story. I don't know. I didn't hear great things about it, though, and I never wanted to see it. Ragnarok is like one of my favorite Marvel movies, though. So I don't think it ranks as good as Iron Man or Captain America. God, Hulk, like the Ed Norton Hulk, isn't even a origin story. I think it ranks. I liked it better than I liked the first Ant-Man. I thought the first Ant-Man was kind of boring, to be honest with you, and it sucks because I thought it had a great cast. I think Edgar Wright was originally supposed to direct that movie, and I think it probably suffered because they didn't see that through. Trying to think of other origin movies. I mean, you've got Black Panther, but that wasn't even really an origin movie, although it was a first movie. And I kind of think I think Black Panther was a bit more slick than this, and Black Panther was just a really terrific movie. So I don't know. I mean, it's solid, but when you're stacked up against some really, really solid origin movies, it's hard to compare. So I'd put it above Ant-Man, and I don't think it would really rank it against anything else, to be honest with you. Let's see here. Brandon Collins, what was the better female empowerment superhero movie, Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel? I don't know. I've never seen Wonder Woman. I need to. I really would like to. I've been saying that since it came out. I heard really, really great things about it. So I don't know. I can't say. I heard really good things about Wonder Woman. So I don't know. I mean, the gist I get is that they're two very different movies, but I'd have to see Wonder Woman really to comment on that. So anyways, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Be sure to leave your comments. Let me know what you guys thought about the movie in the comments below. Till next time, we'll talk to you guys later.